To that, we are live. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight 2. My name is Hiko Simon. I'm here every Sunday night at 22:30 Japan time, at 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time. Good to see people already in the chat, especially on short notice. It has been an interesting week. In fact, actually, it was really great the other day on Friday, right after the resignation. Victor was planning. Did my first video with Victor for a long time. He actually got a chat with Akasan and Unrested, another old timer. As well as Jerry King Ching and Mr. Lawson, I think was the name of the other channel. Some other new YouTubers to me. It was like a 2-hour long live stream we did late on Friday night. It's on Give Me a Break Man's channel. It's worth checking out. There was some, although it was long, it was funny. I was just enjoying. I only talked for 5 minutes in terms of the news part, just giving you a heads up about Tokyo Tonight. But there was some genuine drama. There was some Jerry Springer stuff. There was some confessions. So it was actually a really fun stream. So it was really great to do that with Victor for the first time in a while. It was kind of hard to be able to do that. Give me a break. It was fun indeed. So that's really worth checking out. Nice to see Victor in the comments there. Worth checking out that video if you're looking for something fun to watch. Anyway, it was actually Retro King Ching. Thank you for the correction. Did I say Jerry King Ching? I get the feeling I still have such an association of Jerry Springer with that particular video, which is a good thing. I mean that in a good way. Good to see so many people here in the comments. Let's say hello and see who's here. We've got, and this is what I like about this, is that although you can see everything I can see. So you can see who's saying hello to me in a way that makes it light up orange, which is great. You can also see who's being censored, and it's not my fault. So you can see that too. So good to see you. Andrea Mulboy, excellent to see you, and moving in 2 weeks. All the best with that. Got Quentin Rankid. We have who else? Mr. Quentin Rankid, Mr. Cordy Champ, Sergeant Bilko. Good to see you. Tokyo 503. Good to see you. Give me a break, man. Excellent to have you here. Tokyo 503. I think I just said. We've got Yasa. Good to see you. Chris Jack. Excellent to see you there in the comments. And to everyone else, as always, come and say hello as you come in. It's always nice to see who's there in the comments. And remember, if you would like to get my attention, do what Andrea Morboy did. Just say my name, and I will generally drop everything to answer. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. In a way, I do actually have to end this. I say this every week. There aren't a lot of topics. And I do have to end it on the hour tonight. But at the same time, the topics that we have are kind of a big deal. So, yes, indeed. The emoji fill. I don't know why that is censoring you, Sergeant Bilko, but now you know. It might be in the settings somewhere. It says held for review, so maybe it's in my settings that I can fix that. I should take a look at that. But, in any case, a couple of big stories this week. Of course, we started the week with... and actually, I realized it. Oh, you know what? Is that a picture of butter? Maybe this is Google's AI. Maybe they know. Maybe they know that I get triggered by pictures that look like butter on a plate. That would explain it. Dan H, excellent to see you. By the way, Dan H, apologies the other night for not catching your super chat right away, and I hope you did catch. I did give a full answer right at the end of that particular video. But good to see you. And yes, I do make an effort to cover those. So excellent to see you. Tai Nakamura, good to see everyone coming in. We've got Christopher Luke. There aren't a lot of topics, so at least we will get through half of them. Christopher Luke says, I know what you mean. Well, I think as we all know, bugs are a feature, not technical issues are features, not a bug. And yes, the fewer topics we have, the harder it is to get through them. These are truths in this show. Got Odie Junior, great to see you. Bada bing, bada boom. The FMI, it's time. Abe Akuhei, good to see. Akuhei is a name that I don't recognize, so welcome Akuhei. Good to have you with us, and everybody else. Great to have everybody there. Remember to say hello. Good to see everybody in here. And indeed, like Tai Nakamura, I hope you are also yourself having a good weekend along with everybody else there in the comments. So let's dive in. Let's get stuck in. One quick announcement before we get stuck in. This is why the show takes so long. I'm going to be on someone else's podcast video tomorrow night. So tomorrow at 1800 or 6 p.m. Japan time, There is a person who I noticed on Twitter, JJ Walsh, who I think I featured last week because she did an awesome video with and I've just realized I'm blanking out as I do this. But this week she did a video with Brian Ashcraft that I watched this the other day about the history of sake and whiskey in Japan. And there was the pop culture guy last week, Matt Elt, who was also awesome, and she's basically prolific. She does so many video interviews and podcast interviews with so many people, like in the Japan online community. Her channel, JJ Walsh, she has a YouTube channel, but she's mainly on Twitter and doing podcasts. She mainly talks about environment and sustainability and has people, who are doing stuff directly related to that. So it's not really what I talk about very much, or really what I even do very much in my current job, but it is something that I have an interest in. I actually, my degree was a law degree and politics degree, and for my law degree, I majored in international environmental law, and for my politics degree, I did my final term paper on green political thought. And I had a job for 4 years as a policy consultant for the Ministry of Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry and Environment in Japan, doing environmental stuff. So I could actually talk quite a lot about environmental and sustainability stuff. And yeah, it's funny. I featured her last week, and she's done some more excellent videos this week. But she invited me on for September 11th. However, she had a bit of a schedule change and asked if I could jump on tomorrow, and I'm like, yeah, sure. So I'll be on there tomorrow. It'll be 4.5 hours earlier than this time for people in other time zones, so that may be better or worse depending on where you are, but it should be a lot of fun. I'll definitely share the links on Twitter and on this show next week. And remember as well, if you want to catch the links for this show, you can just go check out my Flipboard. It is shared in the information below this video, and all the links that I'm showing are available if you want to actually go and read the articles or the videos or whatever. But yeah, that'll be pretty cool. So I was on a video with Victor on Friday. I'm doing another video tomorrow. So doing quite a few of those this week. Should be a lot of fun. Jennifer L, good to see you, Jennifer L. Another new name. Always nice to see new names there in the comments. Dave Hunter, good to see that you made it on time and that you're here. Also excellent to see Tech Art too. Yeah, great to see so many people coming in. So now that a lot of us are here, I know more people will come in. Let's dive into the topics. Dan H, you do find JJ Walsh to be a little bit new agey? Yes. Yeah, of course, her show is on environment and sustainability. And it's kind of funny because I am not new agey. I mean, I have had piano teachers who had like 12 cats and surrounded me with crystals while, when I was like in New Zealand. New Zealand's got the highest Greenpeace participation rate in the world, so I was surrounded by it, but I was intellectually interested in it, but I wouldn't say I was a true believer in that sense. So I feel a bit of a fraud talking with someone like her, who obviously is someone who's very much a true believer in that sort of stuff. But still, I think it should be an interesting chat. And there's actually tons of interesting stuff to talk about. I was just exchanging messages with her earlier and was thinking, I could talk about, there's a ton of stuff I could talk about that's Japan related, that's interesting to me and that I've studied and worked with. So yeah, it should be fun. Nesta 125, what's up? Indeed, good to see you. More hair this week. Andrea Moboy, I don't know what you mean. I have the same hair every week. I cut my hair on Sundays, by the way. So this is as short as it gets, actually. If it looks, maybe it's the lighting. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a little bit overexposed at the moment, actually. I should probably turn down that light, but yeah. Anyway, maybe I shouldn't if it makes it look like I've got more hair. This is, I'm not totally, and it's kind of funny because here, I can feel it. It's just, it's like, what happens is it's not that there's no hair, it's just it becomes really thin and hard to see. But anyway, let's get into the topics because this is what we came to talk about. Shinzo Abe, he resigned on, when was it? Was it Thursday or Friday? And it was on Friday evening, that he resigned. Talking a little bit about the background to this. Indeed, don't forget to like if you like. As I mentioned on Victor's show on Friday, the story here is ulcerative colitis. It's a pretty horrible sounding condition. What it is apparently people who have it can be a genetic disorder. People generally have it their whole lives, and it is where people suffer chronic swelling, inflammation, and ulcers within their intestines. And I know what that sounds, and basically what it results in is never-ending painful stomach cramps, stomach problems, as well as diarrhea and problems like that. And although some mean-spirited people said this is actually what caused Abe, when he was first Prime Minister in 2006, to resign. So maybe going back a little bit in history, in fact, there's a long way you can go back in history with Abe. A lot of people like to point out that Abe's grandfather, I think, was the wartime Minister of Armaments during World War II, which isn't so remarkable. You have to remember that in World War II, the results, the phenomenons, the populist, sort of authoritarian empire building, there were parallels between Germany and Japan. But of course, in Germany, what happened was there was a political movement that sort of figured out how to hijack the government and take it over. And, that was elected and was a political movement first, and they took over the military. What happened in Japan was the democracy itself was kind of fragile. It had a lot of political parties with quasi-aristocrats. The same with the military, by the way. But what happened was much like UK was in the 19th century and the 18th century, it was overpopulated, it was poor, and they found that they had all this military power. And what you had generally very pro-West and very sort of, modernist and globalist leaders in the military and in politics. And you had all of these young, energetic, frustrated, and very popular young sort of young Turks, the young military people who took over the government. And sort of, the Japanese cabinet was so weak, and particularly after the military, a number of times, including killing a couple of, they killed a prime minister, they killed a couple of cabinet ministers they didn't like, that were withholding funding for the military before the invasion of China. And basically it was the military that kind of took over the government in Japan, and they didn't take it over like having a coup and saying the military's running things now. They just basically encroached and intimidated, and things like the invasion of Manchuria and the setup for it. This was all done by the military, by the lower end of the military, and it's sort of like everyone on top went along with it, so everyone got swept along. It kind of the same result, right? And very much the same things. So it wasn't like people like Jake Adelstein like to point this out, and this is Jake Adelstein's summary of the prime minister, and he believes that that he's the grandson of a Japanese Nazi and was going to become the next Japanese sort of Hitler himself back in 2012 when he became prime minister. And this I always thought was a ridiculous setup. It's a nice headline. But there are a lot of people who sort of felt that, Abe was the sort of dangerous, revisionist, war crime forgiving, emperor worshipping fascist who was going to come in and tear up the constitution and make Japan authoritarian. And a lot of people really believed that. And there was a lot of commentary along those lines, which I thought was a bit ridiculous. My view of what Abe is like many politicians, like Koizumi and like a lot of people in parliament, they are multi-generational, just like the old samurai or the old, like the town representative. There are so many politicians now who are multi-generational politicians, and when their dad dies, the eldest born son takes over running for the local seat in parliament, and they take over the money collecting machine, and they take over all of that. And Abe is a multi-generational, quasi, in that sense, kind of aristocratic son of this sort of dynasty of leaders who have included some pretty prominent leaders of Japan, including a post-war prime minister. So he comes from that background. I do not believe, even if his his grandfather was and by the way, who was arrested after the war as a war criminal, but so was everybody in the Japanese cabinet at that time. He was the minister of munitions during the war. And he was let off right away. And again, that itself is a very deep history, but I don't think it's actually, for all of those things, I don't think that has any bearing on who Abe is myself, or certainly not as much as people like Jake attribute. In any case, so as someone who was sort of born into this and born into former prime ministers, and who was, a very sort of elite sort of family background as a prime minister, he was actually more or less chosen by Koizumi to succeed him back in 2005 when he first became prime minister. And under Koizumi, going back to 2002, Abe was the guy who basically set up the negotiations with North Korea that led to the release, you could say rescue. There was like a temporary, like conditional visit allowed by North Korea of some of the abductees, and basically Japan didn't let them go back to North Korea. And North Korea said, hey, you're abducting our abductees. And Japan said, screw you, we are rescuing them. But, setting the whole thing up was really Abe's achievement. And he's been very connected with abductee families and getting this sort of resolved. And that's been sort of a theme throughout of something that he's made a big priority about trying to resolve. But it's pretty much his support for Koizumi and his, big, amazing win around the North Korean abductee issue back in the early 2000s that got him to be prime minister back in 2005. And the idea was he was going to carry on the mantle of reform that Koizumi had sort of brought in, which included Japan being more assertive. However, he was only in the role for about a year. And we get to the original story, ulcerative colitis. He's had this lifelong condition, which became so bad that, he basically wasn't able to sit through entire meetings and so on. And to be clear, and he said this himself, a lot of people were kind of snickering and saying, oh, he had to resign for diarrhea, which I guess if you're like a 4-year-old sounds funny, but this is actually a painful, debilitating disability. There's no cure for it. There are treatments for it, but can lessen the symptoms. But generally, people with his condition end up with colostomy bags. They just have to circumvent the intestines entirely. It's and it really affects your ability to have life. And so he was, energetic, and he became prime minister, and he resigned because this condition got so bad he just couldn't perform the job. He found a treatment which apparently after this managed to suppress the symptoms. Sufficiently that he made it back into politics. Of course, I think after him there were a couple of prime ministers, but it ended up with Taro Aso, who ended up, the LDP lost and the Democrats came in, and Abe came back and he won the election that got the LDP back into power in 2012, and he has been the prime minister for 8 years, which is the longest that any prime minister has ever been prime minister in Japan. And when he came back into power in 2012, I made a comment when he resigned. There were particularly people like Jake here were pointing out, oh, he's the grandson of a Nazi. He pays tribute at Yasukuni. He said himself, Abe was clear that of his agenda for coming back as PM, I think people who want to revise and delete Article 9, they don't say that we want a war. They say that we want to normalize. Japan is the only country in the world. I think Costa Rica is the only other country that, large country that doesn't have a standing army. Japan kind of does, but it kind of doesn't. It's not allowed under the constitution, so they actually have to kind of rephrase. And Japan's got like a hyper Coast Guard sort of an army. It's got a lot of restrictions on what it can do. It can't operate offshore independently, and they do a whole lot of things. They buy airplanes, and then they take off the fuel tanks to sort of show that they can't fly long distances, stuff like that. And he sort of pointed out, apart from the fact that he personally sees the Constitution of Japan as a punishment constitution imposed on Japan by the United States, and that Japan's been a pretty good global citizen for the last 75 years. He believes it's time and right for Japan to resume being a normal country which can engage in collective defense and alliances with like-minded countries such as the UK, Australia, and America. To protect its interests against, for example, countries like China. He never, of course, said the last, but that's what he meant. So he said that, he wants to make it a priority to amend the punishment aspects of the Constitution, starting with Article 9, the article of the Constitution in Japan which prohibits the use of force to resolve international disputes, which had a lot of people thinking, oh, he wants to revive the military. And again, there was the extreme rhetoric against him, like when it was partly because the Democrats lost and the LDP was coming back, and he is someone who everyone knows as an ideologically very conservative and kind of revisionisty when it comes to history and whatnot. And so people sort of predicted he was going to tank relations with China and Korea. He was going to he was a hawk on North Korea. There could be a conflict with North Korea. He was going to tear up the Constitution, and he may even want to reinstate, not just a full military, but things like conscription. And this was at a time when, Barack Obama was president of the US. The world was kind of going through a bit of a liberal phase, if you can remember that was the situation at the time. And a lot of people said this man is a dangerous populist authoritarian coming into Japan. The irony looking back now that we were worried about Shinzo Abe and it looks like everybody else got populist fascist authoritarians, and Japan has kind of just been business as usual the whole time. So what I said By the way, the best two contrasting, I mean, generally speaking, the English speaking media in particular has been generally, in the beginning, I mean, seriously, they were calling this the second coming of Hitler. They really were, and it was so extreme and I thought ridiculous, and I was kind of calling out. I mean, credit to Jake Edelstein. He didn't say that he was a member of the Yakuza. That used to be his thing. He'd tie everything to the Yakuza. He did talk a lot about Nippon Kaigi, which is like an extreme right-wing revisionist Rotary Club that most politicians and the LDP are members of, that supposedly has secret agendas to remilitarize Japan. But he's had 8 years, full control of both houses of parliament, the ability to amend the constitution, and in the end of the day, he's read the room. He's seen that there isn't the public popularity with the idea of revising Article 9, so he hasn't done it. So yeah, he's been, what I commented after this was in stark contrast to and you didn't see this very much in Japanese media, except where you expect to see it, in Akahata, the Communist Party newspaper, Asahi, the far left newspaper, and things like Tokyo Shimbun. And except for far left media, nobody in Japan was there wasn't anything like mainstream analysis to say that he was an extremist or that he was an authoritarian and was going to take Japan back to sort of 1930s Germany. But a lot of people in the Western media were saying this, and this was reflected when Abe first went to go and meet Obama in 2012. They didn't give him like the full state banquet like they gave to Xi. It was a bit standoffish and weird, and in the interactions with him, including some lecturing from Biden, including it wasn't a welcome. It was a bit of an awkward introduction. I think it was based on the media coverage that this was a dangerous person. And so, Jake insists that if he had stayed like for another week, he might have been prosecuted for scandals, or he might have been just about to, end the world or do something. But in the end of the day, and let me see, because this really contrasts with No Opinion, another guy who actually is a very, very smart person who writes on, he's got a good blog, and he wrote sort of the extreme opposite about, so Noah Smith, he's put the other thing. It's worth reflecting on how astonishing this all is. A ton of people thought Abe would be an ultra-conservative, even a fascist. Instead, he became the most liberal leader in modern Japanese history, leaving behind a Japan that is utterly changed and far more open and modern. I said something along the lines similar to this myself, and he wrote a longer blog on this, but Abe defied expectations to build a better Japan. Most people on Twitter, spew blood when I sort of say, well, didn't he do a couple of good things? And it's kind of like, well, to me, if you can't acknowledge when someone you dislike does something that's okay, then you're not credible for anything that you say, right? You've got to acknowledge what's good and what's bad, and you've got to judge the person by their track record, not by your image of that person or what team they're on. That's my book. Most of the world, I think, are married to their sports teams. They're married to their political parties. It's like, if you're from that team, if you wear blue instead of red, everything you say is wrong, or everything you say is right. And the world is getting more like that. And that's something you've probably detected by now. I just dislike, and I'll just intentionally contradict people, sometimes just to test them out to see if they're capable of being balanced or nuanced. And the thing about Abe is, I don't like him as a politician, and I don't really, I don't share his personal beliefs, and I don't like his political party being in power. But I can acknowledge that, like these people are saying, first of all, he was absolutely nothing like the predictions about him. And if I was to line up, from the perspective of somebody who was expecting a Hitlerian leader, he has his track record. Think of the things that he's done. I mean, people are talking about that this guy is a racist and he's going to stop foreigners coming into Japan. The number of foreigners in Japan has nearly doubled in the time that he is here. Nothing is perfect, right? And this is the thing. Even when I throw out these examples, people say, "Yeah, but," and of course, there's a "yeah, but" to everything. A lot of the increase is to do with the apprentice trainee visa program, which I've talked about here, which is like a slave labor program. The whole drama at the moment with foreigners that have just been allowed to re-enter, but 6 months of not being allowed to re-enter, as if like they're not residents here. So there's mixed messages for sure, but at the same time, if he was really a let's build a wall, racist prime minister, like exist in some places. The idea that the number of foreign residents in Japan would double is that's actually something that Shea says that he recognizes. The business lobby says that we need more foreign workers in Japan. The economy needs them, and he doesn't politicize it. He just does what needs to be done, and that's what happened. And that's probably not going to change because that's being led by the bureaucracy on this, and it's not being turned into a political football where it would inevitably turn into a who can be tougher on foreigners argument like happens in other countries. Other examples on South Korea. Again, people expected terrible relations with South Korea. And again, it's really memorable how President Park, the right-wing president of South Korea, went so out of her way to be kind of standoffish with Abe and to avoid him and say sorts of horrible things, and treated him like cancer. And in spite of that, in the background, much as like he did with North Korea with getting some of the abductees freed, he managed to negotiate for the third time. Japan did an apology and compensation first under Murayama in 1995, then under Koizumi in 2002, and then he tried again because every time they set this up, the Koreans later on say it's not sufficient and you have to start again. So again, he started up the apology and the compensation fund for comfort women to try to resolve the issue, and the Korean president announced that this was the final complete resolution of the comfort women issue, just before they carted her off to jail. And the new government of Korea undid the entire deal and said it's not enough, as happens every time. So I said, Abe did a deal with South Korea, and everyone, again, I got a lot of tweets coming back saying, how could you say that he did a deal with South Korea? No one there liked the deal. That's kind of the point. I don't know that that's really his fault that fell apart. The fact that he even attempted it. If he was an anti-Korean racist, he wouldn't have even, or a revisionist on history, he wouldn't have tried to do a compensation deal on this. But, he cared enough about it. And by the way, I'm glad that these messages can be seen. Although, please, Quentin Rankin, now that I see the message, play nice in the comments there. We're all friends. And good to see Ahmed Usul that you are okay. And how is it racist to restrict entry to their country? Well, yeah, I guess I could go back to the comments. I'm not going to get distracted. I'm going to keep moving forward. But the fact is that he made a sincere effort, to solve this for the multiple time. I mean, again, it's not really resolved until the comfort women themselves accept the deal. And most of them now are dead or going to be dead very soon. And it was the groups that support those comfort women that sort of spewed all over the deal that the South Korean government did with Abe, that in the end saw it rejected, which means that it's probably the last chance is probably gone for that. But he tried, when a lot of people thought that he wouldn't have. He came in promoting the LDP. I saw a thing today that the LDP only has 14% of LDP members in parliament are women, the second lowest after Komeito, which is surprising. Komeito only has 8%. The Communist and the Social Democrat parties have like 70% women. The Democrats, or the variations of the Democrat Party, have about 40 to 50. Ishinokai, the Osaka Party, has 30%. So he comes from a party where women are only like 14%. But he came in saying he'd help women shine, although unfortunately in Japanese that could also be read as shine, which is the imperative die. But he said that he had a helping women shine thing where he kind of promoted rapidly a number of women into the cabinet originally. Unfortunately, some of them weren't really ready for the role, and they got caught up in scandals, and the number of women they had to resign, and the number of women ended up going down even more. Most notably Keiko Obuchi, the daughter of the former prime minister, another aristocrat politician. There's only one really left who's in the running to replace Abe, who is Inada, who I thought when she was in opposition that she was a right-wing crazy Fruit Loop. I mean, I didn't think Abe Abe kind of was, but she was like way out there. But she's actually mellowed a lot recently. And she's sort of shown that she can be professional and competent, but unfortunately there aren't many people there. So on the one hand, he promoted women, but that worked out badly. The number of women in the workplace has improved, and this is another deliberate campaign that he's done with Keidanren, and it's been an initiative to try to enhance participation in the economy, things like enhancing parental leave for fathers, improving working conditions. These are all incremental. At the same time, a lot of people point out that still the number of managers, women managers, is low. A lot of the increased employment in Japan has been through insecure sort of temporary contract work and so on. So the base of the economy is not very stable. So look, you can say he improved immigration, he improved the status of women, he improved employment, but you could also poke holes in all of these things. He pointed out himself he had 3 real express goals. One was to revise the constitution, which he technically could have done, but he never had the support for, and he didn't push it. He realized the economy was the most important thing, so he was a pragmatist about that in the end. He had an agenda to resolve the Northern Territories issue, which is otherwise known as the Kuril Islands dispute with Russia. Japan, the Kuril Island chain is a huge island chain between Kamchatka Peninsula, Russia, and Hokkaido. The very bottom 4 islands closest to Japan were pre-war Japanese and inhabited islands. They had big populations there. When the Russians came and grabbed those islands at the end of World War II, of course Russia wanted those islands because they wanted the complete, unobstructed access to the Sea of Okhotsk for their warships. But those 4 islands, the people who lived on them, some of them escaped back to Japan and still live in exile in Nemuro, they can see the islands from where they are. And Japanese who didn't manage to escape were deported to Siberia. Some of them spent decades in gulags in Siberia. And, Stalin, as Stalin does, had deported other ethnic minorities from other parts of Russia and put them on those islands and put them in the Japanese people's houses. I mean, it's not an extreme way to say this as being like the occupied territories of Israel or Palestine. This was inhabited land, which was actually the people were taken out and put in jails, and their property and houses were given to Russian colonists that were put in these things. And because of this issue, Japan has not signed a peace treaty with Russia. Technically, World War II is still going on with Russia and Japan, in spite of the fact that Putin and Abe get along. And Abe really wanted to resolve this issue. And I think he was willing to negotiate a kind of deal saying that there'd be no military on these islands or anything like that. But he promised the refugees, the families who lived on these islands, that they would be able to return to their homes. And this is a commitment that he made, and he wasn't able to succeed at that. And the other goal that he regretted was he also wanted to finish the deal with North Korea to get the remaining at least 17 abductees are believed to be still held by North Korea, which is kind of crazy. That in itself is a whole big thing. But I think the fallout of the of the few abductees that were released and Japan managed to get out back in 2005, I think it was so bad for Kim Jong-il that it made him look like he got hoodwinked by Japan, that he was able to admit that he did this thing when he had never admitted it before, and these people got out. And North Korea never got a deal back for it. North Korea said, hey, if you give us some economic aid, we'll let you could find the rest of the abductees. And Japan said, no, you release all the abductees, and then we'll talk diplomatic relations and economic package. But it wasn't just with North Korea that the fallout had an impact. In Japan, the North Korean community was so shocked by learning that North Korea had done this when they had always spoken up for North Korea and said it would be impossible and ridiculous for North Korea to abduct Japanese people to use for training spies, because they have, at the time, they had 600,000 North Korean citizen residents in Japan who would be willing to teach them Japanese or do whatever if they needed them for that. It reflected a lack of trust in the North Koreans who lived in Japan, that they didn't use them for that purpose. So a lot of North Koreans naturalized and became Japanese, and they stopped paying taxes to North Korea from their businesses. So that had a really big impact for for hard currency and so on. So it was a big, I think it was ever since that basically that turned out so badly for North Korea, letting those abductees go, that they shut down. And Abe's been trying to do something to move the issue forward for the remaining abductees, and he's not been successful. And he spoke in his resignation speech about how much he regrets that. But the idea is kind of ironic that, again, he's been the number of tourists has grown dramatically, the number of foreign residents has grown dramatically. All of the predictions that this was a racist, nationalist, revisionist, that we have not militarized. You can point to small things. Japan can now export weapons for the first time. There are small incremental changes. Japan's like lobbying to become a member of the Five Eyes Alliance with New Zealand, Australia, UK, and Canada, America, for sharing military intelligence and so on. So Japan is definitely trying to be, it's tiptoeing along the way towards what Abe would call normalization, to having a military and so on, but they didn't do it. So yeah, it's one of these things. I'm not declaring that he is a liberal icon, but at the same time, many of the things like employment, advancement of women, immigration, while imperfect, he made bigger strides and even regulatory reform. He took a lot of fights with the bureaucrats, which is what we expected the Democrats to do, and they kind of surrendered after Hatoyama resigned. They gave up. Abe had such a strong mandate that he didn't allow himself to get pushed around by the Ministry of Finance. He delayed the sales tax. He did a bunch of things which really annoyed them. So this is the thing. What's frustrating for me is I really think it's necessary and democratically healthy for an opposition party to be able to swap the government every now and then for there to be real accountability. And the irony is that in the end, the Democrats, when they finally got in, they became the conservative institutional party that ignored the manifesto, and Abe has kind of done a lot of the things that we were all hoping that the Democrats would do, and I still hope that they would do. I don't think it's healthy for the LDP to be the single party that's in there forever, and people like Abe or the people who are in the running to become Prime Minister next become Prime Minister. But in the end of the day, even without that pressure, compared to everyone else that's, and not that there's much to compare in terms of the other LDP Prime Ministers, he did actually get a lot of really pragmatic, good results. Free trade deals. If you're the number of foreigners here, the situation of being a foreigner in Japan has totally changed. So I would generally favor the view of, again, not as blindly optimistic as Noah Smith, but certainly nowhere near Jake Adelstein, on seeing that the 8 years under Abe, apart from the political stability, has actually been remarkably pragmatic, and even and again, I think it's kind of easier to act liberal when you are seen as a conservative. Everything's a pleasant surprise, right? And it's not seen as I guess there are no conservatives to be triggered when he's already the most conservative person, so you can get away with it a little bit more. But yeah. So look, it's been an interesting 8 years. Certainly nothing like the predictions, thank heavens. And I did start to say, I told you so. I never thought he was going to be like a lot of people were predicting. And yeah, I think it's been, certainly when I look at what's happened in the rest of the world in the last 8 years, I would say if you're worried about fascist populists, I don't think it's really the place of the American or Australian or British media to be pointing fingers at Japan. It's really happened back in those countries, and it hasn't happened here. So that's how I see the last few years. Which leads on to the candidates to replace him, which I'll talk about in a moment. I do want to check out the comments. I've been talking non-stop. I'm a little bit worried. Let me check I haven't missed anything that I should have. We've got lots of bada bings, booms. We've got lots of ha-ha-has. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you, Nestor125. Colitis is painful indeed. It's a horrible condition, and some people end up with like amputated intestines. I mean, it's a full-on real disability. Excellent to see Jason's All Sumo channel, and Aaron, excellent to see you. Thank you, Aaron. Yes, indeed, did celebrate the diet properly. And to be clear, while I'm losing weight, I'm still very much a healthy weight. I'm not about doing diets where you cut out food that you'll just go back to eating later on. I'm eating what I want to eat. I'm exercising, and I'm just being careful of portions. So yeah, I'm sustaining that. Super chat. Okay, let me go check that out. What else have we got down here? He was the youngest elected prime minister. That's right. When he first came in. Good point. Jason's All Sumo channel. Let me go down here. Aaron, I wonder who his successor be. Well, I'm about to talk about that. I'm pretty sure whoever it be won't have as good hair as Koizumi. Well, no one will have as good hair as Richard Gere in a prime minister, although his son was in the running until today. He did pull out. But Jake Adelstein's kind of over the top on everything. Credit to Jake Adelstein. I must admit, I feel a bit self-censored now that I've met the guy. But yeah, with Jake, he's not lazy. He researches his stuff really hard. He puts his arguments together really well, and he writes really well. And he persuades and has the ears of a lot of people. I don't agree, but that's okay. I just have a different perspective. And, in fact, he's made predictions even in his latest summary of Abe, which could very well prove to be true. But he made a lot of predictions before which didn't prove to be true. So, respect to the guy, but do not agree. So yeah, let me go down some more. Got Kishida. So yes, we're about to talk about the people who are in the running. Aaron, we're just there to throw peanuts. Indeed. Oh, I hope you saw the show the other night. I was throwing peanuts like crazy on Give Me a Break Man stream. That was pretty awesome. Let's go down some more. I'm just looking for where it's orange. Still on the same topic. Good night, all. Good night, Andrea Mulboy. Sorry, I'm still on the same topic, but it's a big topic, so I think it's justified. Greg, Japan's GDP is 2 times worse than that of Greece's. Well, that is another big thing. That's always been the case. It has gotten worse under Abe. It is domestically held. It's not owed to Germany like Greece's was, which partly made that more awkward. But yes, indeed, that is still, of course, in the crapper as normal. And Dan H. I will buy that much butter. Thank you for the super chat. I'll take it as moral encouragement. I guess that makes it worth it. Sachifu, excellent to see you there in the comments, as well as the Atomic Tom. Nice to have you along here. And indeed, colitis is not something. It's not something to make fun of. I mean, it's actually something I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And in terms of him resigning for Abe. Look, I would say I don't like the guy, and I wouldn't vote for the guy if I had better choices and I had the ability to vote in Japan. But I have to say, I think he's done, as Japanese prime ministers go, in my 22 years here, he's been one of the better prime ministers. He's got a track record where he's gotten a lot of stuff done, never perfectly, never as much as I would like or a lot of people would like. Nothing you could say mission accomplished, but he's done a good enough job. And in terms of his health and what he has, Barry Bonds, good to see you. I say, I hope he gets better. Well, hope he gets better soon. But this is a lifelong condition he's got to live with, and otsukare-sama desu and odaiji ni. I wouldn't wish colitis on anybody. I'm glad to see that people have sort of not gone down that route. So who's going to replace him? These are the lineup of candidates that were predicted by a horse racing. This looks like a horse racing guide in a Japanese newspaper. Remman Japan, stop it. Held for review. It is funny. The algorithm seems to know that I'm triggered by butter. It does that, doesn't it? It seems to hold it for review. It detects my pulse going faster in my forehead. So the candidates. This has already changed today. This has changed since Friday. Basically, they've been trying to predict who are the top running people. I gave my quick summary of this on Twitter, which I will repeat here. Starting on the far left, that's the son of Junichiro Koizumi. He is the Minister of Environment who wants to make climate change sexy again. My response to that is, haha. I mean, he might be prime minister one day, but he's basically still on a tricycle. He's kind of young. He's popular because he's kind of good looking, and he's from the Koizumi dynasty, another aristocrat. But no, and he actually today announced that he would not be, in spite of the fact he is very popular, no doubt with the 14% lady members of the LDP. He actually has said that he will not run for prime minister, but he will throw his support behind Taro Kono, who is the fourth guy from the right that we're going to get to, who I think is one of the more interesting candidates as well. So a good call there by Koizumi. But yes, a bit of a joke if he ran right now. The guy next to him, Motegi, is a trade minister. He has been doing the trade deals with the UK, fighting over blue cheese and with the UK. The recent polls in Yomiuri Shimbun, I think in Nikkei, show him with 0% support. But of course, it doesn't matter. It's not a public election. It's within the LDP. But hard to see how, his name's being thrown up as a real candidate. I don't really get it. So kind of like who? I mean, I'm sure he's good enough at working. Nishimura, the man who is handling the Japanese pandemic. Hell no. Are you kidding me? The man who responds to basically of economic revitalization and the pandemic, but mostly economic revitalization. I mean, again, Japan hasn't done that bad with the pandemic, but it's really in spite of Nishimura, not because, thank heavens, nothing's been said about him running and he wouldn't be very popular. Noda Seiko, beside him, she's kind of crazy. I said my reaction was casting holy water to make her go away. She is, again, one of the surviving women members of the LDP, which is good to see, but she has some extreme political views that she still holds, and no. It's kind of funny. If you want to look thin, hang around people fatter than you. That's from Garfield's Eating Tips. And like Garfield the cat, Inada, by hanging around with people crazier and more right-wing than herself, she started to appear less right-wing crazy than she used to, although she used to be like nuts. So she's being touted as the person closest to having a chance of being the next woman prime minister. Some people say that Yuriko Koike, the Tokyo governor, could be the could become prime minister. But the point is, she left the LDP, and you have to be in the LDP or the party that wins the election to do that. So the thing is, if you want to have like, if you want to be directly elected, to have all the sort of power to do whatever you want, people who really want that kind of power, like Koike, like Yoshimura in Osaka, they don't go for national office because you can't. You have to get into one of these big machines and be chosen by the machine. I think someone like Trump, who is basically hated by everyone in the Republicans, if the Republican candidate was only elected by Republican members of the House, there's no way Trump could have become president, right? So what happens in Japan with those types of people is that they run for the prefectural governors, and that's what Koike has done. So within the national government, I don't know that she has a chance right now, but the closest to becoming a chance shot at prime minister is Tomomi Inada in the middle there, but she still isn't that close there at the moment. But interesting for the future. My personal preference, just because he's an interesting character, he's got a great Twitter account. I like his sense of humor. I mean, God forbid I actually like someone from the LDP, but Taro Kono, the guy with the glasses next, he's an eccentric, interesting guy, and I find where he expresses opinions, I often agree with them. He's a member of the right. He's a member of the LDP. They're a den of jackals, sure. And again, maybe it's the hanging around with people who are, more boring and evil than yourself to look good. But he to me is very interesting. He's currently the Minister of Defense of Japan. He probably doesn't have a chance. He doesn't have the numbers within the LDP. But it's kind of funny. Koizumi threw his weight in behind him, and to me as well, he is the most interesting candidate in this whole list. So I would go for that guy. The guy beside him is currently being touted. You see the two circles on the top. He's touted as one of the front runners in this election. He is the cabinet secretary, basically like the White House spokesperson equivalent in Japan, who handles all the press conferences on behalf of the government. Suga, and he's had that role for 8 years, which is remarkable. He's kept it. He's obviously not a Trump White House spokesperson. He's held it for 8 years. And he's been competent at that job, but he has no real personality whatsoever. He has no agenda whatsoever other than just to do whatever Abe told him to do. But Abe's faction's looking to back him, and he's being touted as having a chance. Kishida on the far right of this, I'll skip over Ishiba and come to him last. Kishida on the far right here of the screen. Far right saying that with the LDP is dangerous. He's just a boring. He used to be, I think, the foreign minister, but no particular agenda, no particular numbers, and not very popular or well liked. But he's being touted as someone with a chance. The main person for the last 8 years who like Abe beat to become prime minister is the second to last guy, Ishiba. Again, no real ideas or anything like that. He is a bit of a military freak, and he's and factionally he had the numbers, and he was the person I was expecting was just sitting waiting for Abe to leave so he could take over. And kind of boring and not very inspiring. The fact he's a military freak, that does make it sound like, oh, is he going to militarize? And maybe he would, but he's more actually like a military model collector, like, he'd probably like to buy more F-35s just so he could talk about the specs with the Americans. He was a defense minister, and he really loved that sort of a role, and I associate him with just being really into defense technology. But really no one here very interesting for me other than Kono, and Kono said not to have a chance. So it looks like it's going to be really between Suga and Ishiba. Some people are saying maybe Kishida, but I don't see that. So we'll see. Taro Aso, the deputy prime minister, actually said he is not going to run, to which a lot of people breathed a sigh of relief. Although I'm seeing a Twitter thread this evening saying that there's a really popular women's news chat group, like a 4chan for Japanese women, upon which Taro Aso is like the favorite person to replace Abe. And this is like with 1 billion posts per week. This site, it's one of the biggest sites in Japan, girls channel. I don't understand that at all, other than maybe the fedoras. He comes from the Sicily. He comes from the Kyushu, from the actual most gangster-ridden part of Japan. He's an interesting character. So long as he's not prime minister, I can even like him a little bit, actually, in spite of. Here's the guy. Just for unintentional entertainment value, Taro Aso is an interesting guy. He has a good sense of humor, but that would be a very bad thing for him to be prime minister again. He's been done that before. So these are the people. I guess we'll find out soon. I don't think it's going to be a woman. I think it's probably. I would like it to be Kono. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be Suga or Ishiba. And in either case, it's going to be pretty boring, and I wouldn't have expectations like I have of that they'll do anything more than Abe. Dan H. McDonald's Japan unveils butter-dipped Gold Moon burger, and how Switzerland plans to beat its butter shortage again, and something we can learn real news stories that you are skipping. I haven't heard about these things, but yes, as Abe offered an opinion on on his successor, he has deliberately said he will not say something. I think if he was going to say an opinion, he would either back Suga, who's been his loyal cabinet secretary, or he would deliberately back Inada or a woman to take him over. The fact he hasn't said anything says that he's deliberately stepping back, and he wants the LDP party election to determine that. There will be an LDP party election on September 17 to elect the new Prime Minister. It will be made up of 350 votes from members of Parliament from the LDP and like 170 votes from LDP regional chapters. So basically, it's a very limited number of LDP members. It's not like you can join the LDP and vote for the Prime Minister like you would in the primaries in the US. It's actually already elected sitting members of the LDP. So, yeah. My fridge is going to be stocked with butter for months after this. 7 minutes to go. Can I cover the rest of the news in the week? I've covered one news story in 55 minutes. I can do it. I found this awesome website, lightpollutionmap.info, and it's actually got for the entire world light pollution maps. If you're into astronomy, like I was, particularly because I lived in a really dark part of New Zealand. I lived on a mountainous plateau where we had fantastic skies. It was like living on a space station at night. The skies were so awesome, and that's how I got into space as a kid. Funny thing about Japan, of course, Tokyo, of course, you have crazy light pollution around Tokyo, but what I love about Japan is it's so mountainous that you don't have to go very far. And you've got all these mountain ranges and areas where there are really great dark skies, which is why so many comets get named after Japanese people, because they get discovered from Japan because there are great skies, and Japanese astronomers seem to be very good at attention to detail and taking lots of notes. So it's kind of funny. I mean, comparable to New Zealand even, in spite of all the pachinko shops and everything. Of course, New Zealand does have crazy dark skies everywhere. I used to live right there in Waiouru, that little light blue blob, so much better than Tokyo. But yeah, I thought this is crazy anyway, and it's just a reminder that even in Japan, if you're into astronomy, you can just drive like 2 hours from Tokyo and be in really seriously great world-class dark skies. Naomi Osaka quit and then unquit. Will Day, good to see you there. From the WTA tournament over the Blake shooting, just in solidarity with Black Lives Matters this week. I thought credit to her. She's entitled to show solidarity over the BLM thing, as a lot of sports people did. It was interesting that it's not clear why she reversed her position. She actually won the quarterfinal that she originally said that she was going to boycott. It wasn't clear if it was sponsor pressure or because the tournament did a delay as well, that she felt that was enough. She got injured after winning the quarterfinal, and so I think she ended up, she is not going to compete in the semi-final, but not as a boycott, but because of an injury. Some interesting debate. Some people say that there, of course, were a few Fruit Loops in Japan who said, hey, if she's boycotting a tournament over BLM, then she's not really representing Japan. But again, those are definitely not representative views. I think of the general Japanese population. There are idiots in every country of 120 million people. There's going to be a few people on Twitter who'll say stupid crap like that. But look, this is it's great to see, from my perspective, her asserting her identity, which is she's got a fantastically interesting identity. She is an American, she is Japanese, she's Haitian, and as a Japanese person, she's a black Japanese person. That's not a contradiction. People don't fit into nice little categories. The idea of being Asian American or African American, it's so offensive when you think about how ethnically diverse Africa is, or how ethnically diverse Asia is. She's her own person, and she's expressing her own views, and having an opinion, any sort of opinion, doesn't make you a member of one country or not. But yeah, it was interesting seeing the discussion over that, and good on her. She's still really young, but she's actually much more articulate than a lot of people who should be being a lot more articulate right now in the US and expressing her views on why she did what she did. And good on her. So that was really interesting. This is me talking about in 2014, I did a thing talking about, hey, isn't Abe turning out to be a lot more liberal than everyone said he was going to be? Haha, I was right and you were wrong. Oh, and this was a thing that happened. There's a better picture of it over here. Oh man, there are so many tweets I've still got to do. The Osaka 2025 Expo logo was chosen. Those were the contenders, and as you may know, they went for the crazy googly eyes. I love it. To me, that's like Osaka. Osaka is loud, they're humorous, they're out there. Tokyo just went for like a pretty conservative state. I mean, nice, but the love that has been shown for the weird, quasi terrifying Osaka logo, the fan art, the bread rolls, the scarves, everything that's being made for this. I think this actually shows to me, in spite of looking almost ridiculous, they chose it for the humor and originality. And I think that the Osakans they've chosen a logo which really shows expresses Osaka's personality, and hell, it's doing the job. People love it. People are talking about it. People are. So I was a bit like, holy hell, what were they thinking? But that was kind of the idea, and credit to them. Actually, I think it's I've come around to loving this as a logo. I've mentioned in the past few weeks that the government looks set to announce that they were going to allow foreigners to come back into Japan. When I say foreigners, foreign residents back into Japan. Even a permanent resident like myself, I was in a situation where if I left the country, I wouldn't be allowed back in. I can now come back in. There are some strings attached. You need to have a PCR test a negative PCR test that meets the type of PCR test standards that Japan wants within 72 hours of returning to Japan. Arranging something like that specific can be very hard to do in some countries, so it's not perfect, but there is now at least a way to come back into the country, so that is a good thing. The FMI, thanks for the Abe summary, yes, and the light pollution map. I'm glad to share it. I find that stuff really, really cool. And I'm not going to give into it. Damn straight, Aaron. Fighting to the end. I'm still going to make it. We've still got like 30 seconds. Elon Musk wants to drill holes in your skull. He wants to remove 8 millimeters of skull. Apparently you have 10 millimeters. I didn't know this. 1 centimeter of skull bone. He wants you to sit in a robot, an unmanned machine, which will drill a large coin-sized 8 millimeter deep hole into the bone of your skull and implant a sort of a big coin on your head, which will have little electrodes which will attach to your brain. And apparently, at the moment, what that electrodes will do is they will make a ping on a machine whenever your nose bumps into something. At least that's what was happening for the pigs. Neural machine interfaces are fascinating. I love Black Mirror. I love the idea that we could be within my lifetime recording, vision and thoughts and memories and stuff like that. But crap, no, I don't want to sit in a machine and let a robot drill a hole in my head. Are you kidding? I'll see what someone else does with it, but I am excited with the idea of computers being attached internally in our brains and being able to not having to carry an iPhone around everywhere. Really Black Mirror to think of all the good and bad that could come of it, but I saw fascinating technology, but hell no to drilling a hole in the head. That was a great show. Victor, thanks for having me on the other night. I had a lot of fun. Just generally what happens with prime ministers, you can see they join, then they collapse, and then they quit. And this has happened with these are the last 6 prime ministers before Abe, or since Abe was last prime minister, and he's held on pretty well in spite of it. He's fallen off, but nothing like everyone else. So that was a thing. Toyota has released a flying car, or at least they're testing vertical takeoff and landing, the smallest one created. There are a lot of these things right now, but they have like these enormous, rotor blades over them and stuff like that. Toyota, that looks pretty cool, getting sort of Jetsony. So I love that these will be flying cars pretty soon. Tobias Harris, he has been he's written a book which was released 2 days before Abe quit, which could be seen as good timing or bad timing. I guess it's good timing because now he is the go-to guy for interviews of talking about Abe. So good on him for that. If you're interested in actually reading about what's been going on in Japan the last 8 years, he's really prominent on Twitter. He is a journalist and academic, and he writes a lot, like really in-depth stuff. And if you want a really good profile of what's going on in Japan, that looks like a good buy. Iwate-ken still doesn't want Japanese tourists visiting its prefecture. This is not from Iwate Prefecture, although you would think so. These are monkey busters. These are some women, I think they're from Gifu or somewhere like that, who are there's a comment here. Abundant evidence that Japan has embarked under a major program of remilitarization under Abe. No, these are women. Those are air guns, and they like shooting monkeys who eat their crops. That could be a Cypress Hill lyric. But yeah, don't mess with these obachans, especially if you're a monkey, because these obachan's going to shoot you. That is a thing. Tokyo Wave just continues to be good. I mean, they released this on the day that Abe resigned, which didn't look very good timing, but they did a really good show the other day. That's another good YouTube channel and podcast to follow if you want to do that, just for doing what I do, following what's going on in Japan in a much more organized way. Divorce rate dropped so far. Since quarantine came in, 10% drop in divorces. Yeah, I could have talked for ages speculating about this. Maybe for another week. I mean, there's kind of two extremes to this. It could be that obviously it's harder to go out and have affairs. The fact that people are spending more time together, it seems logical. That maybe you get along better. But there again, it could very well be. There's lots of cases we hear in Japan about divorces when people retire from their jobs. They're so used to the husbands being away working and drinking every night that when they retire, the women want a divorce so they don't have to spend all their time together. And I don't know, there might be a bit of a rebound in divorces after this ends. Maybe the spending time together at the moment is what's is challenging that. But yeah, it is interesting that at least it's having a positive effect for that. That is the flying car. That is the Osaka logo. We're done with the topics. Not bad. 3 minutes over. I did pretty good tonight, didn't I? I thought I did. Oba-chan's be trolling. Seriously, you could come up with some seriously sweet lyrics, I think, about the Oba-chan's shooting up those monkeys. I mean, that was some stuff. So anyway, that's what's happened this week. It's been a big week. Thank you all for joining and being patient with me. I'll get faster so I can go back to doing tunes at the end of the show. However, I do need to wrap it up for tonight. We've got an early start tomorrow. Have a good week, everybody. Remember, tomorrow at 1800, I will be live on JJ Walsh's channel talking about hippie sustainability, environment, and just what I do. I guess I'll be doing a bit of a self-intro about this and the things that I like to do. But yeah, I'll probably try to angle it towards things that are consistent with the theme of her show, which actually are things I don't talk about on here. So yeah, when we were planning it out, there's some stuff on there I don't think I've shared before that I'm planning to share about jobs that I've done before, about my actual day-to-day job in Japan. Has at times involved stuff that this is about. So yeah, I think it'll actually be a great chat. The video, of course, I'll share the video when it's recorded, but if you want to join us live, that always makes it more fun. So I'll definitely share that information at 6 p.m. tomorrow. And remember, every week I'm back here at 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time. If you like. I like it when you like, and it certainly helps the show and everything else. So thanks again for all the chats and comments. Appreciate the butter chats from Dan H. Paragotti, there is a comment that there's a handle name I don't recognize. Always nice to see someone new. Joined and missed my opinion on Taro Kono. I like him. Yeah, it's funny how many people actually in the foreign thing say, yeah, Kono, I like him. I've seen that opinion expressed by a lot of people, and I'm there as well, but he doesn't seem to have the numbers, but I would like that. Aaron, maybe I should change to a 1 hour 30 format. I feel like I need that discipline. There's always a thing about, if I had more time, I'd make the show shorter. It takes hard work to keep it short, and I will continue aspiring to have a compact show. I also want people to watch the recorded version. I'm sympathetic to someone seeing a show that looks like 1.5 hours or 2 hours, and they'll look at the video and they'll see how long it is, and they'll think, screw that. So I do want to keep it to an hour. But yeah, anyway, very good to see everybody in the comments. Everybody have a great week. Stay safe, of course. We are still seeing like 200 cases per day roughly in Tokyo, so the COVID is still with us in spite of the crazy hot weather. Tech Art too, great to see you. Great to see everybody here. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. Keep cool till after school. Kakite ano. Peace. Boom. And see you tomorrow if you want to check me out on JJ Walsh's channel. See you later. Have a good one. As I said, trying to subtly move the cursor towards the end stream. Found it. Okay, I'm going to end it now. Japan has hammered discipline into me. My aspiration has become like a Yamanote line train, which I'm 6 minutes late. I definitely failed the train test. Talk to you all later. Boom. Peace.